Hey everyone, this is Tyler from the Count It Out with Mike and Tyler podcast, and we are live pals with Talk Solid Wrestling.
Thank you very much, Rock Solid Wrestling fans, for joining me on another episode of Talk Solid Wrestling. On this episode, we're talking to Tyler Wolf. That's of the Count It Out with Mike and Tyler Wolf. We talked to his other half. Some would say his better half. Tyler would definitely not. On an earlier episode of Talk Solid Wrestling, the second episode, as a matter of fact. And now Tyler is joining me. No countdowns here. Instead, we're going to take a very interesting approach. We're going to talk about Jake the Snake Roberts and the WWF World Championship run that he could have had in 1991. I think Tyler comes up with a pretty fun scenario. And then I go back and forth with it, and it's a little self-indulgent. But hey, if you like fantasy booking, this episode's going to be for you. And if you like Tyler, please make sure to check out him and Mike on their show, Count It Out with Mike and Tyler. You can listen to them on all the same platforms that you'll listen to this show. And you can watch their episodes on YouTube as well. If you're listening to this on YouTube, well, go on over to the Count It Out YouTube page and give them a like, give them a subscribe. That's what they need. And hey, Tyler was nice enough to come on this show, so be nice back. Give them a little follow. They'd appreciate it. All right, enough yakking. Let's talk Jake the Snake. It's going to be a good one. Trust me. Danny, ring the bell. You know, Tyler, you've always been a very creative person. And when I pitched some ideas for what you wanted to talk about on this episode, you looked at them all and said, nah, you know what? I ain't going with none of your ideas. We're going to do a Count It Out idea. And I'm really grateful for it because I actually think it's a really interesting topic. Why don't you explain to the listeners what you've come up with?
Yeah, I always think it's fun when everybody's like, these are the greatest wrestlers that have never been the world champion before. But not everybody can be a world champion. And a lot of these names, when do you make them a world champion? Because if you look back to, the Golden Era, the Hogan era, can you really take the belt off him in the 80s to give it to Piper? I don't know. Can you, I say Mr. Perfect was a world champion because he was the AWA world champion, but in the early 90s, was there a spot for Mr. Perfect to be the world champion in the WWE? I don't know. So I thought it would be fun to take a look at one of the names that everybody always mentions as one of the greatest people to never win a world champion, and fantasy book when exactly he could have been a world champion. And that name would be Jake the Snake Roberts.
Timing is everything, trust me. And that is exactly what we're going to do is we're going to equate some time, a 20-minute time limit, to your fantasy booking of Jake the Snake winning the belt. This is a really interesting topic because obviously you got my brain thinking about it as well. And, oh, what would I do if I had the pencil here? But I'm sure you had some parameters that you are sticking to with this, for example. So like maybe do you want to go over that a little bit just in case anybody, Rob, wants to comment with, hey, what about this? Okay, well, we're gonna cover it first.
First of all, I needed to be on record, and this goes for Mike and I as well, that for us to come on your show and have a time limit, we just want to put an asterisk beside it is absolutely hilarious to us because you are Mr. Broadway on our show, and we love you for it, and we love every second about it. But Mike and I get a giggle out of being kept to 20 minutes when we come on your show, all right?
If I may quote one Jeff Goldblum, all right, listen, we spent so time thinking about whether we could, we never stopped to think if we should. And that's your mistake, not mine, sir.
Well, since I only have 20 minutes, I will jump into my criteria then. And that
Please.
would be that it had to be a realistic scenario. So I had to go back throughout Jake's career and figure out a time when I thought it would be appropriate to put a world championship on him and give the guidelines of who he would beat for that title, maybe a little bit of history of what that run would be and who he would end up losing the title to. So it has to be a realistic scenario. So Jake had a couple different options I thought were really cool because he had, the big run in the 80s as a babyface. He had the heel turn, and he also jumped to WCW where there was an opportunity to become the world champion there as well. For me personally, I decided to go with the 1991 version of Jake the Snake Roberts in that heel turn era of
That
Jake.
is the correct choice. Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. I thought the 92 jump was the first place my mind went, but when I really started to think about it, I think if you're going to give it to Jake at any point in time, it's got to be what I consider to be the peak of his career and the peak of his performance, which is, I think, 1991. A little peek behind the curtain, you may recall not long ago, you guys did a list of 1991's best moments. And I remember you reached out to me and you said, "Hey, what do you think are some of the best moments of 91?" And I remember bringing up so many Jake Roberts things that I
Yeah.
said, "Hey, I think Jake Roberts might have been the MVP of WWF in 1991." And here we are coming full circle with this moment. So I'm really glad that you chose this era. So why don't you take us back to 1991 and tell us
Yeah.
how you would like to get this started?
Well, I want to get this started very shortly after his heel turn. I'm going to keep the stuff with the Ultimate Warrior in place with all the snake bite stuff and those promos because I just love them so much. I could never erase them from history. But I thought this was a great time because the current world champion was Hulk Hogan. And Hulk Hogan was definitely not the Hulk Hogan of the 80s here, where, the people were kind of getting a little tired of Hogan at this point, I think. We were freshly removed off of the Ultimate Warrior experience, which didn't work out. He was just kind of floundering right now in this really terrible feud with Sergeant Slaughter that was way past due. So I decided to jump in, and Jake the Snake would actually be main eventing SummerSlam 1991 against Hulk Hogan
Wow. Okay.
for the world title. This is where we go. You could have Jake kind of maybe beat Warrior in the lead up to this as like a number one contender shot to kind of put a bow on that feud. I just don't think we needed the triangle of terror against Hogan and Warrior at SummerSlam 91. So I decided to pivot and put Jake with The Undertaker because I do like that pairing. So they have to stay together. And I think that's very important for what we get to at the end here. And I've got Jake the Snake defeating Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam 91 in the main event with help from The Undertaker. You got me, brother. You still got to keep all that stuff in there. And I also wanted to do this at SummerSlam 91 because I think it's very important that we have Jake the Snake continue to crash the wedding of Macho Man and Elizabeth. I don't want to erase that from history, but Jake is upset because this wedding is taking away from his moment. He's finally won a championship. So him and The Undertaker can still crash the wedding, and SummerSlam goes off the air the exact same way as it did in 1991.
It's so scary how similar our minds work on a number of different things because in the scenario that I kind of half-heartedly crafted because it is your scenario but I did it did get my creative juices going a little bit. I also have Jake and Undertaker teaming up for SummerSlam, and I also have Jake feuding with Macho Man with the reasoning being that he feels slighted that Savage took a spotlight from him at SummerSlam. So it's so funny that you and I have that same
Yeah.
idea because it's clearly one that we both want to see.
Well, and let's be real, Jake and Hogan was a dream match that we never really got. They did those little house show loops and they pulled the plug on it because Jake was getting more cheers than Hogan at the time. So I think this is it's a very unique first time televised match, and it's a big match to main event the second biggest pay-per-view of the year at this time with SummerSlam. And we have Jake coming out of the pay-per-view as the world champion. We can have him, defending some titles over the next few weeks and months against names like the Big Boss Man, Tito Santana, maybe the Texas Tornado. Getting a lot of help from The Undertaker along the way. I really want to establish that connection with them. About 1 month out from Survivor Series, I want to take us. Hogan's got his eye on getting the title back, and Macho Man, still livid from the wedding, he's trying to get his hands on Jake and get reinstated as well because he's still retired in this scenario. So I'm going to take us to Superstars now, an episode of Superstars. We're maybe a couple weeks out from Survivor Series. And Hulk Hogan is in the ring. Maybe he's just had a victory over an enhancement talent or a lower level talent. He's doing his Hogan must pose. And The Undertaker is going to make his way down to the ring. He's going to stare down Hogan. But we're going to have Jake sneak in behind Hogan and jump on him and beat him down. And Jake and Undertaker are really going to lay a beating on Hogan. And as they're doing this, they're taunting Macho Man from the entryway or whatever. Macho's on commentary. And this is going to lead to Macho running into the ring, getting beat down by these guys, and we're going to keep the very famous snake bite angle to Macho Man here, just with a little twist on it. Because again, I don't think that we should get rid of this, right? So after this, we're about, let's say, 2 weeks away from Survivor Series. Hulk Hogan is really pushing Jack Tunney. I want Macho Man back. Jack Tunney is very furious with Jake the Snake. He says, I don't want to see any more snakes at ringside. There's going to be big consequences if this is to happen. Jack Tunney will agree to reinstate the Macho Man. And at the Survivor Series, we are going to get Jake the Snake Roberts teaming with The Undertaker to take on the reformation of the Mega Powers brother. Ooh, put it in. And it'll be the first time since, I believe, 1989 that we do have the Mega Powers reunited. I think that is a very fun draw angle for that time period and maybe gives Hogan a shot in the arm again with Macho Man at his side.
No question about it, for sure. Okay, so I'm intrigued. What's happening in Detroit now?
I think we're gonna do we're gonna have the Mega Powers go over with Macho pinning Jake. I think that's big. We can have Hogan and Taker kind of, brawl to the back, leaving those two alone. Macho gets the pin on Jake because we still do have Tuesday night in Texas. And with this pinfall victory, the Macho Man will now go on to take on Jake the Snake in Tuesday in Texas again.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't hate that idea. I love Jake and Macho. That feud is, I think, a pivotal moment from 1991. So I'm all here to keep that in favor. Everything you're talking so far, I'm enjoying.
So we're gonna go to Tuesday in Texas, and Jake is going to defeat the Macho Man with help again from The Undertaker. Maybe it could be a DQ. It doesn't have to be clean, but
Right.
I've got Jake keeping the title. Uh, but after the match, I want to keep a lot of the same stuff that they did at the original Tuesday in Texas as well. I think that Elizabeth should be involved. I think Jake should push Elizabeth down. And I think that Jake is going to now go under the ring and he's going to pull out the snake again. Now, he has been very warned by Jack Tunney. I do not want any more snakes. There will be grave consequences if this happens. Once the bag comes out, Hogan is gonna, they pull the let's pull the snake out for the visual. Hogan's gonna run out with a chair. He's gonna clear the ring. He's gonna save the day. You could probably still keep Hogan and Taker at that event as well, just with the history going on there. He's gonna save Macho, so there'll be no rebiting again. But there are consequences. And the unfortunate consequence for Jake the Snake is going to be that President Jack Tunney is going to come in and strip Jake the Snake of his heavyweight championship. And it is going to be held up at the 30-man Royal Rumble in 1992 because there is no way that you could ever erase that performance by Ric Flair. I think that this creates a lot of intrigue going into the Rumble as well because you've got Jake still really hot as a heel, not losing the title. People believe that Jake could become a champion again because he's been the champion. You've got the wild card of Hogan and Taker, and of course Flair doing the marathon with Bobby Heenan, continuing to be Bobby Heenan.
It's so interesting because you and I had a similar exit strategy for Jake as well. Mine happens a little bit earlier, but it's very interesting that we both kind of end up in the same place, which is Royal Rumble 1992. I got to tell you, man, that's a pretty good run. Now, I have to ask, in your timeline, is this kind of where it ends, or do you continue to have Jake more involved with it, or do things progress as they naturally would in the course of history?
I think you still got to get to the Undertaker face turn with Jake. I think WrestleMania 8 is such a pivotal moment in the career of the Undertaker and the legacy of the Undertaker. And, that promo in the funeral parlor where, whose side are you on? Not yours. Like all that stuff. And that angle is so strong with Jake hitting the DDT on Paul Bear, locking the casket. I don't think you can erase a lot of the stuff that happens. But that period in 1991, I think, is just the perfect storm that opens up and, gets the belt off of Hogan because it was just feeling very stale at the time. And then I don't think a lot needs to change after that because Well, we got the title held up originally is because the Undertaker got ashes thrown in his face and Jack Tunney got hit by Ric Flair, and I don't know, it was just a little bit hokey. But if Jake is pushing Elizabeth down and trying to defy authority with the Cobra again, I think there's a valid reason. After being warned so many times, there will be consequences. I think it makes Jake look like a more of a badass too. I don't care. I'm going to do what I want. I'm the big heel here.
No, I agree with you because my mentality was the same thing. It's so funny because the choice to do his run in 91 as the point of entry for a championship program does present the issue of how many great angles and stories, or I should maybe if they're not great, at least memorable, that intercede with having such a pivotal change in history because you want to preserve so much, and yet you also want to try and do something that was completely different from what actually happened. So that I think was the biggest challenge when it came to coming up with some ideas here.
Mhm.
I want to ask: is there anything you wanted to kind of add or throw in or sprinkle, or do you want to hear about kind of because again we went on similar paths, but there are a few things that I think I would have done differently had I had
Yeah.
the
I'd
book in the
love
same
I'd
era.
love to hear some of the tweaks that you would have made along the way there because I do think that we're very parallel lines with, slight little detours to get to the same.
I agree. This is very much a butterfly effect, flap of the wings, and it changes a bunch of stuff, but a lot of stuff stays the same as well. All right, so I'll give you my quick pitch. I would actually start things a lot earlier than this. I would turn Jake in the fall of 1990, and I would do it at not SummerSlam, excuse me, Survivor Series, rather than the entire team of the Visionaries win. I would have Jake be the sole survivor by last eliminating Robert Martel and blowing off that feud. And I would do the inverse for poor Tito. Tito and his All American team is going to lose to Sergeant Slaughter's gang, and they will be the four guys that team up with Ted DiBiase to face the team of Hogan, Warrior, and Jake. And where this is all going to start is the promo before the match in which Hogan and Warrior specifically tell Jake, "You just came back. We know you've just fought a big war. So you take a back seat, brother. We got
Mhm.
this for you. We're going to carry the load here for you, man. We know that you got beat up pretty bad out there, but we got you, brother. We got you." So the whole match, it's Warrior and Hogan hot. And Jake's hurt. Like, don't get me wrong. Jake is visibly hurt. So you can see these dudes are just being friends with them, right? So finally, we get a big moment. We get the big double down. It's Slaughter. It's Warrior. Slaughter's the only one in his team left, and it's the three of them against him. So everybody's like, "Oh, this guy's finally gonna get it." Warrior, Hogan is hurt. Warrior goes for the tag. Jake comes in. He's ready. He's a house of fire. And then he turns around and he DDTs Warrior. He DDTs the WWF champ, and then he walks away. And then, of course, Slaughter still doesn't get the pin though, because we're just going to write him out completely.
Yeah.
And then Hogan and Warrior, because Hogan and Warrior must pose. So
Absolutely, they must.
so they win the match despite that happening. And that's the turn. And of course, the reason is very obvious. Jake says, "You guys, you treated me like the little brother, well, this is what happens when you turn on a snake. Snake bites you back, kind of thing."
See, I
So
thought I thought about that as well. I just couldn't part way with the blindfold match. I just love it so much. I just couldn't. I couldn't get rid of that WrestleMania 7 moment and those vignettes with the Warrior. That was my big. I thought about that era as well to turn Jake.
100%. It was really hard for me to get rid of that. But if sacrifices had to be made, this is what I'm willing. This is what I'm willing to do for my vision. And essentially, what happens is Jake Roberts takes Sergeant Slaughter's spot. He faces the Warrior at the Rumble. Macho King causes him to lose the title, and Jake Roberts becomes the WWF champion and becomes John Moxley before John Moxley, and he starts putting the WWF championship in his snake bag, so that
Mm,
it's the snake is protecting the belt from him. It's an
I like
extra
that.
little layer of metaphor there. So we've only got a few minutes before I have to cut myself off. So I'm going to try to go through this real quick. Jake beats Hogan at Mania to be retain the championship. I will put Savage and Warrior on last. which plants some seeds of jealousy for Jake Roberts,
See,
Macho Man's
I would
really
have
my
loved it if you got
spotlight.
rid of that match because I hate that retirement match with all my heart.
Well, if I may plug your show, if you go back and listen to the retirement match episode of Counted Out, you'll know I love that match. So I absolutely have no problem putting that on last. But again, early seeds planting for Jake to hate Randy Savage because he's stealing my moment. Now, don't get me wrong, Hogan will get his win back, but he'll get it back after the summer when Jake and Undertaker team up to take on Warrior and Hogan in the match made in hell in Madison Square Garden, in which Hogan cleanly drops the leg and beats Jake 1-2-3, setting up a main event for Survivor Series, Hogan versus Jake Roberts in Detroit. But before we get there, Jake Roberts unleashes a cobra onto the Macho Man Randy Savage due to pent-up jealousy over months of time. This violent act is too much, and Jake Roberts is suspended for 30 days, meaning he is unable to defend the WWF Championship. He is stripped of the title at this point in time. Ric Flair is walking around saying he's the real world's champion anyway. So who gets the shot in Detroit? Well, Hulk Hogan is still the number one contender, so he gets the spot, and taking his place will be The Undertaker, which doesn't sit too well with Jake the Snake. Interference abounds in both the rematch Tuesday in Texas, and similarly, Jack Tunney says, okay, we're putting this belt on the line in the Royal Rumble. Jake is very upset backstage that he is not being given a second reign to go with Savage at Mania. Even more upset when he learns he's facing The Undertaker, who will then squash him essentially at Mania, and gets even madder when he turns out you're also not going to be on the booking team like
I was just gonna say that.
like we promised you. So he goes off to WCW, and history continues on its path as the bell rings and 20 minutes elapses, which means it's a no contest. But Tyler, that means we'll have to have you back for a rematch.
Would love it. I'll come back with my coal miner's glove like Jake left in the WWE.
I don't want none of that, brother. This was fantastic. Thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
Thank you. This is a blast.
I had a lot of fun with that one, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, please do me a favor. Like the episode, subscribe to our channel. I'd really appreciate that. If you're listening to this on Spotify, iTunes, leave a review and make a comment. You know what? No matter how you're listening to this, comment if you can with, why don't you just say trust me? I know I keep repeating that one. It's just the best. Jake Roberts, what a catchphrase. Something so simple. Trust me. Comment, trust me. If you want to support us another way, you can check out rocksolidfanclub.ca. Yeah, this is the best place to go for rock solid everything. And that includes this show, because if you become a member of the Rock Solid Fan Club, you will get early access to this episode. So if you want to be hearing the next show like now, go join. Plus, you get full on-demand access to everything Rock Solid Wrestling. Matches, memories, legends, superstars. All the best shows, all the best stuff. rocksolidfanclub.ca. If you have a question for me or a future guest, maybe you got an idea for a future episode you'd like to hear, email it to info@rocksolidpro.ca. Big thank you to our producer Danny and Pulse Hook Audio for the edit, and thank you very much for listening. Till next time, we will see you ringside for the next episode of Talk Solid Wrestling.